Welcome to Married Life TV. For those watching on YouTube, I'm excited to be with you guys today. And for those watching on Spotify or any other podcast medium, I want to say welcome to Married Life Management Podcast. This is where relationships are healed, hearts are strengthened, and love is rebuilt from the inside out. Today's episode is quite an exciting one, and I believe you've had a great day and things are working out well for you and your spouse. And I'm hoping that this episode is going to give us some insight into some areas in our relationship that perhaps sometimes we overlook. I'm looking at something very important: the real cost of holding grudges in marriage. And I can tell you, many couples, they overlook this aspect. But let me start with this truth: grudges don't protect you. They don't help you in any way. They don't support you. In fact, they imprison you. If you've ever held on to something your spouse did, if you feel silent, if you feel that there's a war growing between you and your spouse as a result of this grudge, then you will understand that this episode is exactly what you need. I want to talk to you about something I dealt with as a result of my coaching sections. One of the ladies, wife that felt hurt by the husband, she stayed with that hurt. For a while, it turned into resentment, and she used it as a shield, as a weapon. The husband apologized, but she kept the memory so alive to the point that it started eating her up bit by bit. Something she started with days turned into weeks, then weeks turned into years. The fact they didn't argue a lot or they didn't talk about this thing at all, the reality in the relationship was it looked as if things were getting better, both of them, because there was no conversation, there was no confrontation, there was no bringing this thing up again. But deep down, they were disconnected. They were not like friends, if you know what I mean. They were not in that place of wholeness. The intimacy was just faked. So one day she realized something heartbreaking. It wasn't the fact that she held on to this thing for a long time. It wasn't the fact that she thought she was punishing the husband for creating this war, this divide, this disconnect. She was actually punishing herself all these years. Her heart was heavy. Her joy was gone. Her peace was diminished over and over again. Honestly, the marriage suffered silently. And luckily, they were able to seek help. Otherwise, things would have just deteriorated to a point of no return. Grudges can build over time, and before you realize the full impact of what has happened, your heart is locked in this, and you are imprisoned in that place of resentment and grudge. So, as we look into this episode, I want you to just think about how you deal with grudge in your relationship. Because grudge will cost you intimacy. Grudge will cost you your relationship. It costs you your peace. It's a very difficult and painful place to be. So I want us to just talk about what exactly is grudge and how does this grudge form. Let's break it down a bit. A grudge is an unspoken emotional wound you continue to hold You continue to replay in your mind, and you relive it over and over and over again, long after the moment had passed. Let's look at it this way. Here's how grudges usually form. Number one, the hurt happens. The way they spoke to you, your spouse, or you felt betrayed, or you were disrespected, or you felt disappointment, or there was a broken promise. The list can go on, but the hurt has happened, and it's a reality. Number two, the wound isn't processed, which means there was no repair, there was no conversation about it, there was no true apology received or given, and there was no safe conversation about this hurt. Number three, self-protection mode switches on. So what you do here is, I will never let this happen again. I will never let them take me for granted again. I will never accept this kind of behavior anymore. You seriously go against anything that will make you go through this again. Remember, the hurt has happened, the wound is not processed, it was not talked about, and then you start looking for mechanisms and mood on how to protect yourself so that this will never happen again. The fourth thing that happened is bitterness begins to harden the heart. So you become more silent. You gradually begin to avoid anything that will trigger this hurt in you. And with time, it goes deep. The fifth part of hurt or grudge forming in your heart is this thing that happened now becomes a memory that controls the marriage. Because grudges are not loud at all. They're quiet, they're subtle. They grow like roots underground, unnoticed, until they begin to choke the relationship gradually. Have you been in that situation where something has happened in your relationship? You know you were supposed to express this to your spouse, you're supposed to talk about it, but you hold on, you never said anything, and things begin to go really, really bad for both of you. So it's really, really important that you realize if you do not act, if you do not do anything about this, nothing happens, nothing changes. And at the end of the day, you are the one that's going to be at the grudge. You're the one that's going to be at the pain. So examine your relationship. Is that something that you haven't spoken about? Is that something that is bothering you? Is that something that you need to have a candid, honest conversation with your spouse? Is that something that you have not processed? And now this thing is eating you up. This thing is holding you back. You cannot be your full self. So know that that's what grudge does, and that's how it forms in you. Let's talk about what does grudge look like. Now, what causes grudges in marriages today? Because grudges don't come out of nowhere. There are real causes for grudge to happen in your relationship. I talked about hurt. So think about unresolved conflict. Conversations can end very quickly with your spouse about certain things, but apologies that didn't go anywhere or was not even received or said. There are things that has been bothering you about maybe your finances, your sex life, children, parenting roles and responsibilities, support, so many needs in the relationship, but you just swept it under the rug, under the carpet, and you never talked about it. These things, they grow to become serious grudges in the relationship. When your spouse is feeling unheard or they are dismissed, they're trying to have a conversation with you. There's something that's bothering them, but you're only quick to respond. You don't want to understand. You don't want to know what they're going through. So when a spouse says, well, that's not a big deal, just get over it. This is like being a child. hear. The heart will hear, but just that is not a big deal, can be a big problem, if you know what I mean. When they're sharing something with you and you just push it aside, you change the topic, or you try to flip it and make them feel guilty for even asking, or try to make them feel unworthy, unseen, unheard. With time, this thing will grow into grudge and you won't like it. Sometimes the spouses are afraid of vulnerability. They hold the grudge to avoid maybe hurting someone again, or being seen as needy or attachy, or seen as someone that is not reasonable. But you know that you want to share. There's something that's bothering you. But because you've tried it in the past and the conversation didn't go the way you would have thought, grudge can spring from this point. What about past trauma? Old wounds make new hurts feel sharper. So many adults, so many spouses, so many wives, husbands, they are carrying a lot of trauma. The trauma has been a conversation that I've been having lately myself with different people. And a lot of us, we had trauma growing up. A lot of us have different things that we've not healed from. Even though we claim to know who God is, and we go to religious events and we pray, we do all sorts. But there are some wiring, there's some conditioning and programming that from childhood is not making us effective in our marriage, in our relationship, in different level. And sometimes we don't even want to examine if we have one. Maybe your spouse tells you, this is traumatic. You need to deal with this. You need to heal. You need to see a therapy. You become angry, you become upset, and you begin to do things that you don't like. Just because somebody told you that you need a therapist. Some people are pride. Sometimes we hold grudges because we don't want to be right, or we don't want to be wrong. Whatever reason it is, sometimes pride just stands on the way. You're hot, but you don't want to open up. You don't want to be seen as weak. There's so many reasons why people are just proud. Well, grudge is there. Why didn't you deal with it? Emotional disconnection can also create serious grudge. When intimacy is low, when sensitivity is high, when every conversation ends in an intense argument, dissatisfaction, and everybody just feels so emotionally tensed. What about silent treatment? Withdrawal, stonewalling, not taking responsibility or becoming emotionally available can be an issue. When people withdraw, when you hide under whatever excuse you want to give, these things can create serious grudge, because every grudge traces back to an unhealed moment in your past. And guess what? Every unhealed moment becomes a permanent emotional blockage to a relationship that would have been flourishing in real vulnerability, real intimacy, and harmony, and also in partnership. Because they have not healed from that moment, it becomes something that has triggered them into something else that they never anticipated. So let's talk about the real cost of grudges. What is the health and relationship implication and the impact if you continue to be like this? And if you think about it, every one of us in one way or the other, perhaps we have gone through one form of grudge or the other. So you can relate with some of the things I'm going to say. Because if you don't find a way to handle grudge in your marriage, this thing will grow into something really, really painful, really, really difficult. Grudge is not something that we should celebrate. It's something that we should deal with. So let's talk about grudges, how it impacts our marriage and relationship with our spouses, our significant other, and also our health. I want to break this in some forms. Number one, psychological impact, resentment. There's going to be emotional exhaustion and decreased empathy, overthinking, walls that prevent closeness. You're not able to be in that right state of mind to actually connect with your spouse. What about the physical impact? Well, research has shown very clearly that grudges increases stress levels. Cortisol levels are up. There's heart strain, sometimes sleep problems, insomnias, anxieties, depressions. These things mentally affect you, and you are not able to function properly. Spiritual impact is a bitter heart cannot carry peace. Well, you're not going to have peace. You continue to be in that place of struggle and pain. A hardened heart cannot receive love either. So if you're holding on to unforgiveness, then it's going to block your intimacy with God and your spouse. So the spiritual impact as well is something that you need to consider. Now, what about the marital impact? There's emotional shutdown. When there is grudge in the relationship, it's going to be very difficult to connect with your spouse properly. It's going to be very, very hard. Because emotional connection comes from having that vulnerable place whereby you speak, you share deeply, heart to heart. But you're not going to have that because there's grudge. It's going to create distance between both of you. You're supposed to be close and intimate. You see passive aggressive behavior, loss of affection. There's no desire to even see your spouse or be with them or try to be intimate with them. Constant tensions, arguments. You lose your partnership, you lose your harmony, you lose your peace. And sometimes you can emotionally die just because you don't want to see grudge as something that's very difficult. And there's no way your marriage will grow in the presence of bitterness or grudge in your lives, because bitterness kills what love tries to build. So you have to make up your mind to ask yourself, what are the things that this thing I'm holding on to is costing me right now? Maybe some of the things that you're going through now, if you can just get rid of unforgiveness, grudge, and bitterness, and all these things might just begin to shape. Things might just begin to turn around. Things will begin to shift for you and your family. So we have talked about what grudge is, how it's formed. We've talked about how grudge is caused. And then we'll talk about the impact, what is costing you. Now let's talk about how to release grudge. What's the solution? It's not just understanding the dynamics of grudge, but what is the solution? So this is where we're going to make some mindset shift. It's going to be transformational shift, right? And this is basically talking about healing, where you can release the grudge, release the bitterness, release the hurt. By releasing it, it's okay. It's really, really okay to let go. I want you to understand this before I share a little bit about how to release grudge. I'm not saying that releasing grudge is glorifying what happened. I'm not saying that the grudge didn't hurt you or wasn't painful. I'm not saying that you were not affected by what they did or what he or she did. What I'm trying to emphasize in this part of this conversation we're having today, I want you to have the mindset and the position to say, I refuse to let this pain, this grudge control my heart anymore. That's what we're trying to say. So how do you release this pain? How do you release this hurt? How do you release this thing you've been carrying that makes you see your spouse sometimes almost like an enemy? Number one, you need to name the wound, name the hurt, name the grudge. Say it out. Write it down. This hurt me because this grudge is this. you have to acknowledge the pain before it can be released. If you don't know what it is, how are you going to release it? How are you going to let go? Name it, say it, point at it exactly. This is the wound. This is the grudge. Number two, I want you to share without attacking, even if you're going to discuss this with your spouse. I felt A, B, and C when this happened. I need A, B, and C as a result of this. I was affected because A, B, and C. Always try to share from a personal perspective. Don't say you always do this, you never do that, you ruined everything. When you say that, you're attacking your spouse and they're not going to listen. So come from an I statement. I felt that when this happened, this caused this. I need you to stop doing this because it's going to help me become this. I was affected when you did this or that. Be very clear and precise about what you need. Number three, let your spouse respond. When you've done this, when you've said this, be calm. You see, sometimes healing comes from just a sincere apology. Let them respond. And if they apologize sincerely, accept it. Understanding is very important. And then seek for clarification. And even if they want to. So listen attentively without being defensive. Let your spouse respond. You've shared, you've opened up, and this might just become another way to change the dynamics in your relationship. Number four, replace resentment with boundaries. See, grudges from your spouse can be very hurtful. But also remember that grudges form because there are no emotional boundaries. So you have to create new agreements with your spouse, right? We don't raise our voices when we're angry. We will talk within 48 hours of this conflict so that everybody's cool and everybody's happy. We will not ignore each other regardless of what we face. We need to talk things through or agree when to discuss this. We will not fight to win. We will fight to understand each other's side and make amendment or adjust where necessary in order to move the marriage forward. That is replacing resentment with boundaries. Very clear. Number five, choose emotional cleansing. This means removing the emotional poison. What has this thing done to you? Think about it. You can't pray, you can't write, you are down, you are upset. But choose emotional cleansing. You can pray and just release this person from your heart. If you want to cry, if you want to talk, if you want to breathe, if you want to release, if you want to forgive. Remember, whatever you do in order to release this emotional thing that have gripped you all this while, it's not for them, it's for you. You want to set yourself free. You want to liberate yourself from possible things that this thing would have caused, right? And then reconnect slowly. See, after healing, after coming out of this wound, this pain, it doesn't mean that everything will return instantly or intimacy will just return instantly. Take small steps. This thing can help you guys to get to a place where things will begin to be better, just seamlessly. Hold hands, talk about it openly, pray together, sit close to each other, share your feelings, do whatever you can to restore emotional wellness and safety with your spouse. So if you take these steps, you'll be able to release these grudges and you can be free again. You can be free again. So once this grudge is released, how will you build this new marriage? When you have discussed this, you have talked about it, you've named it, you have released it, and now you're free. So you need to now find a way to create new emotional habits. How can you guys connect regularly? You see, weekly checkups, date nights, touch and affection, mutual appreciation, finding a place to go, discussing about things, like become intentional about ensuring that your emotional connection is there, is intact. You have to forgive. The Bible says that offenses will surely come. And it says, forgive anyone that comes to you, whether 70 times 7. So you need to practice quick forgiveness. Don't store hurt address it early. Don't leave it for too long. Some spouse will hold grudge and hurt for weeks, for months, for years. That's going to affect you over time. So try to let go. Build emotional transparency all the time. If they have hurt you by what they say or what they didn't say, be respectful and share. Do you know this hurt me? This made me feel a little bit distant from you. Do you know this is what I need now? And invite God into the whole healing process, right? Ask Him to soften both hearts. Your hearts, restore you guys' connection, rebuild trust. And you can pray together as well. Support each other because you need to protect this bond that you have formed. Because when you protect it, it grows. When you protect it, it becomes better. Don't neglect it. Otherwise, you go back to the ruts again. You must be intentional if you want the relationship, if you want the transformation to happen. And that is how you start building a life that is without bitterness, without hurt, without any pain. Let me leave you with this. A grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for your spouse to collapse. It hurts so much. And it will hurt you much more if you're drinking poison and then you're waiting for your spouse to collapse or to pass out. And I want to remind anybody that is going through any of this, grudge in itself is for your own good. Just know that because you're healing doesn't mean that the memory completely vanishes. It's just helping you to free yourself from any possible bondage that this thing could happen. Any possible bondage this thing could bring into your life. So clearly, and make up your mind and say affirmatively, my marriage deserves peace, not bitterness. So I'm going to do whatever it takes. My heart deserves freedom, not prison. So I will do everything to protect it. Because when you do this, then things will begin to change in your relationship and things will begin to change very, very fast. But if you don't, what do you expect? Your relationship is just going to remain the same and the pain will continue. I want to appreciate the fact that you watch this or you listen to the audio version of this. Take action and just sit back and ask yourself, is there any grudge here? Is there any bitterness here? Is there something that is bothering me? Is there something that I need to do differently? And be bold about it. You'll be surprised the impact this thing will have in your relationship. Are you holding on to grudge right now? You need to let go. You need to let go. And if you're here and you want to continue to improve your relationship, you want to change things, wow, I want to know, what is your thought in the comment box? I want you to tell me in the comment box, what do you think about grudge? And what is the impact? Do you have any other techniques, any other ways that someone can come out of grudge or empower themselves to be a better version of themselves to their spouses? Let me know in the comment box. And if this is your first time, make sure you click the subscribe button if you're YouTube, and also follow us on our podcast platforms so that you know when we release more content like this. Thank you for joining me for this transformational conversation on the cost of holding grudge in your marriage. So if this episode has blessed you, please share it with someone who needs this healing. And remember, love grows where forgiveness flows. Love grows where forgiveness flows. Enjoy the rest of your day with your family, and I will speak to you soon. Take care.